Hiya, hiya. Well, they gave me an initial. We've become a country of initial droppers. SNL, Saturday Night Live, the CDC is that a cable company? No, that's the one that tells us whether we're healthy or not, or whether we're going to have vaccines or not, we got all these initials. I'm mixed up, MD used to be the key. You were wanting to be a doctor. You were an MD. Then I became an MD. I was a music director at a radio station. But the great privilege I have now is I'm called, what is it now? An OC. I'm an observational comic. I never knew that because a lot of people think that I am an MA, which is a media asshole. That's probably more accurate. But here I am sitting on my porch and I'm looking at the world through my one visionary eye on America. This is the one that I have, the one that I see, I observe. I'm an observational comic. I didn't know I was even a comic. I thought I was a humorist. Anyway, I flatter myself. But I'm going ahead with this flight stuff today. People are complaining about airlines. First of all, we all acted out big time by thinking this pandemic was over, and people started to gather without masks. And they said, maybe the vaccines don't work, or it got controversial, it got political, and a lot of people didn't get the vaccine, so now they're looking for respirators and funeral homes, and we don't like that. We are not happy with that. As a family member, I will tell you it's the worst, but as an American citizen, I'm looking and I'm saying, how come England is okay? Well, we've been doing things that are really bad. You can't go to Fire Island and do all the things you used to do before. You can't hang out at the Lollapalooza in Chicago. You can't go to the ball games and think everything is okay just because there's peanuts and popcorn and Cracker Jacks. It ain't the same. It's got to be a little bit, and even the tennis, world tennis, you got to wear a mask now. Why? Because we want this thing to stop variances. What is it, a variance? It's an amoeba that's splitting up and going into very different directions and getting stronger. It's doing push-ups while the rest of us are just debating whether we want a vaccine or not. Hey, just get the shot. This is most people who get the shot. The worst that happens to them is they get a little sick. The worst that happens to people who don't get a shot is they're gone. So that's it. It's the jury is out. Now the judge is telling you right now, this is it. You want to live, get a mask and get a vaccine. That's all there is to it. It doesn't get any more. It doesn't get any clearer than that. The airlines are really stupid. First of all, they separate us in the terminal waiting room of 3 and 4 seats apart, and then you get on the airplane and you sit next to a guy who's not wearing a mask while he's eating or drinking, ordering food off that wonderful food cart that they got. Spirit, of course, doesn't serve anything because that's a bare bones airline. When I book a flight on Spirit, I try to get the overhead bin. That's the only comfortable spot in the world, as your favorite observational comic. Also, if you use the men's room on Spirit, they even use single-ply toilet paper. It's an amazingly really cheap airline. You got to pay for everything. If your suitcase is too large, if you carry on, if you put it if you check it through, if you have been late for the flight, you're not there 2 hours early. It's more punishing than waterboarding, which is, I would rather be waterboarded than fly Spirit. I'll tell you that much. And that's a Miami airline too. It's out of our backyard here. But I like JetBlue. JetBlue is, at least they're trying to keep the thing going. There's only a few flights that have been canceled. The worst part of all of it is when you're in the airport and you have to wait because your flight's delayed, waiting for another flight with the mask on, because you cannot do anything without the mask in the airport. So you feel like you are in the Army, and speaking of vaccines, that's the worst fear we used to have when we joined the Army or when we got drafted, was you're going to get a vaccination. Even Elvis went, ouch. You don't want to get a vaccine, but you gotta. That was part of it. And when you're a kid, you get the vaccine. The doctor is like a Norman Rockwell painting, where they stick the needle in your arm and you have some sort of a frantic look on your face, and that becomes a painting. This is the world that we live in right now. We're living in a world of constantly changing things that you had no control over. I have no control over my bowels, let alone the rest of the world here. I don't try to tell my kids how to live. I just simply cut them off the will. That's all you got to do, you know. And if you have a reverse mortgage, they can get flying. They're not counting on you for anything anyway. And I love this when they say, Tom Selleck says, "This is not my first rodeo." I've talked about that before. And the other one is that Morgan and Morgan. You know, I think the fight between Johnson and Johnson and Morgan sounds like a Jackie Mason routine. You know, Morgan and Morgan are fighting Johnson and Johnson. I don't know whether to get the vaccine or to go ahead and get the money from being crippled that I didn't cause the accident, and they're getting paid. They didn't do nothing. And they're going to get money. They didn't have the accident. I want to break one of their legs so they know what it feels like. Then they can have half my money. See, that's a Jackie Mason. It's an observational comic. And as your local favorite media asshole, I must tell you that people are, again, more stupid than ever. We're creating stupidity. It's become a commodity. You could go to the Wall Street on it now. There's a definite difference, incidentally, in the way we dress. I wanted to mention that. As long as I'm on the airlines, everybody dresses down. Nobody wears a suit and tie on anything anymore, not even to a meeting. We probably wear them to a wedding or a funeral. Nobody wears ties and jackets. Have you noticed that's gone pretty much? This is a very leisure society. I remember when they had those first leisure suits, and like Saturday Night Fever, where I think John Travolta wore those pants with the bell bottoms. Yeah, and the tight shirt and the collar like this, you know. That was a look, you know. But we have evolved. Now we have these tight pants, so everybody has skinny legs and all. The legs are that thin. Even if they're not, you got to squeeze into those pants because they don't make them for regular people anymore. And God forbid you should be a fat guy. I love that Fat Man store in Toms River, New Jersey. My friend Tom Chauvin used to go there, and the card used to say, "If it don't fit, we don't give a shit." Love that store. That's my favorite store. And Simone, let me tell you about her. Now, the Simone that I care about is not Mark Simone on the air. I like him, he's my friend. But the other Simone that doesn't want to do the Olympics, I mean, she's got a mental problem. Hey, listen, you know, there's a lot of pressure on everybody all the time, every day to perform. I understand. I have that same mental problem. I don't want to compare me to her because then I'm going to get in trouble. But I have a mental problem where I can't get it up. The ratings I'm talking about. And hey, I want to be an influencer. I'm the non-influencer on Facebook and on YouTube. I'm YouTube tied with Facebook. You know that, right? I mean, you know that. And you got to know that my favorite comic in the whole world has become myself. I go home and I watch my own tapes and laugh. You talk about self-centeredness. I don't really do that. Come on. Do I look like the kind of guy that wants to see what I've screwed up already? Do I want to see it again? I don't want to make apologies, you know. I've had enough of that. I remember when I first came out, when I was born, you know, I came out of my mother's womb and the doctor slapped her and me. It's kind of a toss-up here to have to be a humorist. You got to make people laugh, not wonder. You know, they sit there and say, "What the hell is he talking about? Where's he going with this?" See, that's not humor. It's not. And Simone, back to Simone. I started with that. I knew Nina Simone. Now, Simone is the singer who is the daughter of Nina Simone, who was famous in the 60s, and she closed her piano on my hand. We were working on talking about civil rights, and she was on my television show in Buffalo on Channel 7, I think. And I had I was trying to play the piano, and she closed the piano on my hand. She didn't like what I said. I reminded Simone, her daughter, of her mother. I should have called Morgan and Morgan. You know, we didn't have them at that time. What a ridiculous thing. Get yourself a lawyer and a banker. Get yourself an investment. If you're an investor and you're a stockholder, you'll always have money. But if you're a worker, you're going to always be out of work. That's the way the country's designed right now. It's the Joey Reynolds wrap. Where's that aluminum foil? They should sponsor me, a Reynolds wrap, of course.